Welcome to the Financial Planning Association of Orange County webinar series. This is the debt management portion of the workshops. I'm glad to be here with you today. My name is Janet Larsen. I'm a certified financial planner and a member of the OC chapter. I have had some personal experience with this topic. When I was younger, when my kids were little, I was a stay-at-home mom and my husband's company closed down. He was without a job. He was going to school at the same time. And so he had to only be able to work certain hours and he had trouble finding a job. So I ended up going back to work. I got a temp job at a credit company and I did debt collections. So I've been both sides. I'm racking up the debt and still calling people at the same time, telling them to pay up. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do to make your life better and to help you get out of debt. I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can work along together and see what this looks like. So here we are, controlling debt. And the very first thing you need to be able to do is to understand your debt. You've got to know what you got charged to you. Some people have no idea how many credit cards they have until they sit down and look at what they've got. Now, hopefully you've had the opportunity to have the credit seminar and kind of talking about your credit report. When you get a statement from your credit card company, it will have one of these account summaries on it. And you can see on here that it has your balance, has how much you've, sorry, how much you have charged, how much you bought, how much you fees or any charges that you've got going on here. Underneath there, it has your credit line. So that's how much the company is willing to lend you. They reduce that amount by the current balance amount. And then they also have your cash advance credit line. And that has to do with splitting that off. So if you get cash using your credit card, they usually charge you a higher interest rate on that as opposed to something that you have purchased. So you can see that debt is the money that you owe and credit is the ability to take on more debt. So you have that credit line available. You could charge more on there. And you use credit to borrow money. And once you borrow it, it becomes debt to you. Now there's two kinds of debt, good debt and bad debt. And people get into debt for many different reasons. Everybody has different priorities and different needs that they have. So there are a couple of ways that are good. A mortgage is for buying a house. That is usually almost like an investment because the house normally goes up in value. So it's money that is sometimes looked at as being a savings, although it's not. As auto loan, in Southern California, you've got to have a car to be able to work in a lot of cases. And so that would be an investment in your working capacity and ability to take different types of job, not as limiting. And student loan is an investment in human capital, which is the ability for you to make money. And so usually that is a great investment so that you'll be able to earn more and have a better job throughout your earning years. Some of the bad uses of debt are buying things that you want instead of need. So if you've saved up money and you go and buy something, great, whatever. But using debt, using a credit card to pay for those is not a good idea. Now, the example that you may take is you have to buy some clothes. So if you're buying it for a party, versus buying a suit for a job interview. You can see one would be more of a need, one would be more an investment in your earning capacity versus something that you would just use one time or a couple of times, but that is a depreciating asset. So your dress or things that have less value the longer you own them. A bad use of debt is credit card debt. It's normally high interest rates, and you spend a lot of money on paying off your loans because of that. And installment payments. You may go to a furniture store and say, there's a couch I want, and they'll let you put it on these installment payments. Much better to get something that you can afford and don't have to be paying these for these things unless you absolutely have to. The next thing to be really, really careful of is these high interest rate loans. So car title loans. If you run out of money and you have a car, sometimes they'll take that as collateral, meaning that they'll let you have a loan against that. But normally those are very short-term loans and very, very high interest rates. Payday loans are where you need some money and you ask for an advance on your paycheck. These again are short-term. However, if you don't have the money, will you have it in a week or 2 weeks, whenever your next paycheck is, to pay this off with this additional interest that's on there? They think if you can't afford to wait that long, then you might be a bad interest rate, and they are allowed by the government to pay these exorbitant amounts of interest rates. Sometimes the APR is between 391% and 613%. So you end up paying more for the interest than you do the actual loan amount. So be super careful and just say to yourself, what would I do if I can't pay this off in a month? And don't even try for one of these loans if you can possibly avoid it. It's very rarely that you can get out from under here at all easily. So understanding your debt, well, the things that you need to know are, who do you owe? So get out your statements, how much you owe, the entire amount that you owe, payment amount, so the minimum that you have to pay, and the due dates. And sometimes the due date time, like I said, it's my one company, they made me pay it by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 2 here. So basically I only had the morning to pay that for the due date. And interest rate. So fixed means they can't change it. Variable means it's tied to another marker, interest rate marker, sometimes called the LIBOR. And as it goes up, they can raise your interest rates up, and they just have it tied, like whatever that rate is, I'll add another 10% or something like that, and it's variable. And all of these things, including your finance charges, fees, and penalties, are on your statement. So even though it's little tiny print, get out your magnifying glass and read them. It's boring. You may think I can't understand this, but it's important for you to look at these things and understand and avoid paying fees and charges that you otherwise could, keep out of. And how long is it going to take you to repay the loan? So I'm going to show you a worksheet. This is available on the FPAOC website, and I'll show you that at the end, so you don't need to write it down. Just a sample of a way you can you don't even need the form to do it, but who you owe, how much you totally owe them at the current time, what the interest rate is, and what the minimum payment is. And they have these 2 little blocks, so you write down everybody as you find them out, and then you put them in order, and you put them by importance. And normally from the highest interest rate would be at the top, with the lowest interest rate at the bottom. So put everything on there, your student loans, your auto loans, your payday loans, anything like that, everything should go on here. And I've known people who have had to have more than one worksheet. So, but you need to have everything on there. So this is an example, a question. If I have an extra $100 that I could use to pay extra debt, which one should I pay first? So the options would be your auto loan, your mortgage payment, your credit card balance, and student loan. Well, generally it would be your credit card balance, because that would be the highest. They vary, and if you only pay the minimum, then it takes you a very, very long time, and you pay tons of money in interest. The auto loan, the mortgage, and the student loan are fixed amounts, meaning that it can't go up and it won't change. And it's usually much, much lower on these types of loans. So this is the true cost of credit we have here. An example of one amount, so it's $6,000. You see it's the same. That's the principal. That's the original loan amount. And if you pay it off, so on the left-hand side is the year or the months. So 12 months is 1 year. If you took 1 year to pay this $6,000 down, 18%, it's going to cost you $660. If you take a year and a half, it's going to be $891. Take you 2 years, it's going to be $1,189. And if it takes you 5 years to pay this off, the interest is $3,141. So you can see the longer you take to pay this off, look at the difference in that money that you could be using for yourself to pay to do any kind of fun, better thing than giving it to a credit card company. So use that extra $2,000 or $3,000 that you'll save by getting out of debt. Okay, and if you're paying credit card fees and those kind of things, it could even be more expensive. So use them wisely. If possible, make it a goal to pay off your balance monthly. That's a very good habit to get into. Oh, here is a plan to reduce your debt. So here's 2 examples of ways that you might get out of debt. First one is the most logical. You pay down that highest interest rate first. Make sure, though, you pay the minimum on all debt. So that's the first thing you do. Pay the minimum on everything. And anything you have left over that you're going to start to reduce your debt, put it on the highest interest rate debt. Now, sometimes these highest interest rate have the biggest amount of money charged to them. And so it's very discouraging if you say, oh, it's going to take me 3 or 4 years to get this paid down. And the whole time you're feeling this pressure. So they have another one called the snowball method. So you pay the minimum on everything and then an extra on that small one. So if you have one that's only $200, you pay that one off, and then you have this feeling of empowerment that you can say, I've got this and I'm able to do it. And you feel so enthusiastic that it helps keep you motivated. So if that's what you need, then go for that. So whatever works for you, take it. You can go to see somebody who has a credit counseling. For credit counseling, there are a lot of places that'll do this for free. So I don't recommend that you do this unless it's some really out of control amount that you'll never be able to pay off in your entire lifetime. But we'll get to the end. You can call us, set up an appointment for free, and give you some advice on whether or not you really do need to pay somebody to help you get out of debt. The other thing to help reduce your debt, of course, is increase your earnings. So get a side job, like maybe around the holidays, they're looking for extra people to come in and work, and you maybe can get an extra job there. Stop paying for things that you don't need. Cut out anything that has a hole. Maybe reduce your Starbucks habit to once a week. I've known people who have actually taken their credit card, put it in a bucket of water, and froze it in the freezer. And they said, if it's in a real emergency, then it'll be worth it for me to let this thaw until I can use it. But they aren't using it for any off the cuff, any non-real emergencies. So whatever works for you, try to take all of those things and plug up those holes. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I was going to talk about. So there are sometimes mailers that come and say you can transfer your credit card debt to a 0% interest loan. And that's great. Just read all the fine print. Sometimes you get in these and you don't pay on it, and then it's due. The money is entirely due at the end of this term, maybe a year. If you don't have the money, then they will charge you interest as if you hadn't paid anything from the very beginning, and that would end up to be a whole lot of money that you weren't expecting. So be really careful of maybe a really high interest rate at the end of this 0% transfer. So read it before you make a decision. And if you need help, then ask for it. Here's a free debt management tool. You can see here we have the powerpay.org free. And here's an example of what it looks like. Maybe you might have a car loan, $3,000, 4% rate, credit card, $6,000 and a $5,000 with 2 different interest rates and how long it might take you to pay those off. With the different payment rates. So one is $100 and one's $150, even though the rates are different. So they'll do all the calculations for you is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to add anything or subtract anything. And it will show you the difference in the approaches. So if you use these power payments, like we've talked about highest interest rates first, it might save you up to $7,000. Over $7,000, and instead of 12 years, maybe even just down to 3 years. So these things make a difference. So the next thing I want to talk about is after you're out of debt. As soon as you're out of debt, the next thing you should do is have an emergency fund. So start taking all that money that you've been throwing at the credit card companies. Now you have an extra amount and put it into this emergency fund. So an example of this is we have Sally Saver and Steve Spender, who both lost their job, and it ended up being for 6 months. So they're earning $3,000 a month. Unrealistic, but just for easy numbers. So Sally had created this emergency fund. It had $3,000 in there, and Steve did not have any money. So he's Steve Spender. So Sally loses her job, and she uses her $3,000 that she had saved. Doesn't last long enough, so she has to spend another $3,000. Steve ends up spending, he doesn't have any savings, so he's got the $6,000 that he pays out. Both the same credit card, both 18%. Both of them are paying monthly payments. Sally pays hers down in 3 years and 5 months, and Steve takes 12 years and 11 months and pays almost going on $10,000 in interest. And if you, at the very bottom line, Sally had her $3,000 that she saved. She charged $3,000. She had interest of $1,000. So she ended up paying, using up $7,000. Steve didn't have any money, so he charged that $6,000 with the interest of $9,000. He's $15,000. So over double what she did just because she had saved up this $3,000. So if you have this money, if a tire blows and you need to get a new one, you're spending less for that tire than you are if you charge it and start paying interest on there. Now, if you are in serious debt, you may have some debt collectors coming after you. There are things that they can and can't do. There's a Fair Debt Collection Practice Act, federal law that limits what these people can do. So you may have a dental bill or a hospital bill or whatever it is, and it's not them coming after you. They've sold it to somebody else, or they're helping somebody else is helping them to do this debt collection. But there's things that you are protected from. They can't come to your workplace. I imagine your boss would be really unhappy if there was somebody outside their doors trying to collect money from you. You might even lose your job over something like that. So they cannot do that. They can't harass you. They can't arrest you. Sometimes I've heard of people getting phone calls saying, if you don't pay this, I'm going to make you go to jail. That they can't. They can't pursue you for debt you don't owe. So always, always, always check. I had gone, we had a hospital bill, and when we paid them, but the bill was in one account and the payment was in a different account. And so they didn't get put together. So they said we owed this amount of money and we really didn't. So don't take what they say for granted. Check it out. Make sure you really do owe it. Don't pay for anything that you don't owe. And they can't call you whenever they want. So there's limits on, they can't call you too early in the morning and they can't call you too late at night. There are things they can do. They can, you maybe say, this is an old bill, and they can still go after you. It doesn't matter if it's expired. They can pressure you. They can they want to try to get you to pay what you owe. They can sue you. They can take you to small claims court or to court on that. They can sell your debt. So now pretty soon somebody else is trying to get a hold of you and trying to get this money out of you. And they can negotiate. So if you are not able to pay, they may be willing to accept a lower amount. Be tough, I mean, you stand up for yourself, all right? But be careful. And if they do violate these things, report them. Don't put up with it.